Your Fighting Illini jump up the rankings to number 13. But let me tell you about something I learned that pissed me off, and I think it's going to make you angry too. Locked On Illini, let's go.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of Locked On Illini. Thank you so much for making us your first listen each and every day. My name is Sunny Verma, your host here at Locked On. I make content for you every single day. So if you're an Illini alum, a sports fan, maybe a former athlete, make sure you hit that like button while you're watching this video and the subscribe button if you haven't already. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. I'm going to start this show with just speaking for a minute with some positive news. Gabe Jacas announced that he's going to be coming back to the Illini, and basically now everyone that was eligible to return to the Illini, that wanted to come back and that the Illini wanted to come back, looks like will be coming back to the Illini for the 2025 season. I wasn't able to get in front of a camera and do a breaking news episode, but this is fantastic news. Of course, I did a football episode yesterday, and I'm going to be focusing more on football in the second and third segments today. So I didn't want to completely ignore this, even though we're going to talk mainly about basketball. But obviously, fantastic news. Again, the ceiling for this 2025 team gets even higher. And I'm telling you, the season we just had in 2024, it could be even higher in 2025. But what today is going to be about is the new AP rankings came out, and Illinois shot up the rankings 9 spots, going from 22 to 13. And when the rankings came out, I felt great, and I'm like, hey, finally the nation's starting to realize what we here at Locked On Illini and the community already know. This Illinois team is for real. For a month and a half now, we've had to deal with some of the most prominent college journalists leaped Illinois out of their top 25. And I just sat there questioning what games are they watching and not realizing that Illinois could very well be the best team in the Big Ten. You guys here, who are my everydayers, you know it. I've been saying it since the season started. But they've been hovering out just outside the top 25 and then the lower 25. But obviously, with that huge 32-point victory over Oregon, the nation's starting to notice, and the major journalists, whatever that means, are starting to notice. As this ranking came out, discussions started happening, and something I found out really pissed me off. I don't like to call people out by their names, but sometimes someone is just so inept at their job that they deserve to be called out for, or at least give us an explanation on why they did the things that they did. And the gentleman I'm talking about right now is Brett Bloomquist from the El Paso Times. Now, who is this guy, right? All I know is he's an accredited voter in the AP poll. Well, let me tell you just how close Mr. Bloomquist pays attention to college basketball. Illinois beats Oregon by 32 points, and they beat Washington in Seattle. And Illinois goes from unranked in his poll up to 24. Oregon is 6th on his ballot this week, having gone up 2 spots from his ballot last week. That's right. Oregon is at number 6. Illinois is at number 24, despite the fact that Illinois just beat up on Oregon by 32 points at Oregon. He didn't watch the game. You know what? You don't have to watch the game. It'd be nice if you could, but people live busy lives. Writers, they're constantly churning out articles with deadlines. And sometimes, yeah, of course, you can't watch every team play in the top 25 every single day. But is it too much to ask to check a box score? I mean, this was an easy fix. There's no logical reason to have Oregon up that high and Illinois down that low if you paid attention to what happened last Thursday night. And that's why, for me, I try to relay the message that, you know what, the polls really aren't that important. Of course, they're nice for perception reasons because it's kind of the blanket number that everyone just accepts, especially during the season. Of course, other factors come in closer to tournament time. But really, the only numbers that should matter to the Locked On Illini community. I mean, I'm honestly so pissed off at this point. I'm thinking of just not bringing up the AP ranking for the rest of the season because of what I just learned. But from now on, the only numbers that should matter are the KenPom, the Torvik, and the net ranking. Right now, Illinois stands at 11 in the KenPom. They stand at number 8 in the Torvik and number 7 in the net rankings. And quite honestly, that sounds about right. There's no, hey, did you watch the game or not when it comes to those rankings? That's just pure what happened on the basketball court. Analytics, numbers. I know some of you don't like that. And sure, I think sometimes it has too big of an influence on sports. But I'll take that over a guy blindly not paying attention and making it blatantly obvious. And you have these sort of mistakes that could easily be corrected. And again, he hasn't acknowledged it. He's been called out by all of Illini Twitter on this. It's unfortunate. Again, right? I don't know Brett, and maybe he's got something going on in his life that, he missed all the action this past week. But he's got to own up to it. Let us know. All that we ask is, if you have a responsibility, if you accept that responsibility of being a credentialed guy on the committee, basically submitting your poll results every single week, respect the position. If it's one of those things where you don't have much interest, I think this gentleman covers UTEP. And if you just want to focus on UTEP, that's fine. Forfeit your obligation. Like I said, it's tough to watch every single game every single week. And I understand nobody does that. I try to sit there and watch every Big Ten game that's on TV. But hey, I have 2 kids by myself, and it's hard. And I'm not saying I sit here and watch every single game. By the way, I'm recording this while the Ohio State and Minnesota game enters its second overtime. But that's what I mean. I know I have an obligation to you guys to know what I'm talking about when it comes to Illinois basketball, Illinois football, and the Big Ten Conference in general. And so with that responsibility comes with the work of that responsibility. I watch these games. I need to know what I'm talking about because I've accepted this role here at Locked On Illinois. If he doesn't want that responsibility of turning in that paperwork every single week with what a proper poll should look like, then forfeit it. No one is forcing you to take on that responsibility. I guess maybe sometimes it is too much to ask. And maybe I'm being a little overzealous with my emotion right now. Again, overall, Illinois being ranked at number 13 does matter, at least perception-wise. But I'm just telling you guys, and I hope you understand why, from this point on forward, when it comes to where their rankings are, I'm mainly going to focus on the KenPom, the Bart Torvik, and the net ranking. And I hope those are the ones that you're going to focus on too.
Attending the new 12-team college football playoff games is an incredible experience that brings fans together like never before. I remember the excitement of past playoff games and can't wait to make new memories with the updated format and extra teams involved. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time's Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
All right, and welcome back to Locked On Illini. It's the Tuesday episode, and of course, every Tuesday, I bring on my dear friend Ted from the Big Ten Ted channel. Ted, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. We got two Big Ten teams in the Final Four of the college football playoff. We 4-1 against the SEC in the postseason. It's never been a better time to be a Big Ten member, both just in feeling and, of course, financially, because of Ohio State and Penn State being in the semifinals. That's $14 million per school. So that's $28 million that's going to be distributed to Big Ten schools. So it's roughly evenly distributed to 18 schools, about $1.5 million. So go build yourself a new science building. Don't spend it all in one place. All that. Josh Webber, I know he's going to spend it responsibly, but yeah, it's a great time certainly to be a part of this conference, and narratives are certainly shifting.
Absolutely. And speaking of one of the narratives, obviously the Big Ten is doing very well over the other Titan in the room, the SEC, including, so Ted, you and I have not discussed this. I've discussed this ad nauseum on this channel, but Illinois defeats SEC South Carolina in the Citrus Bowl. It's a game, again, I've talked about ad nauseum, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Oh, boy, it was peak Big Ten. It was peak Brett Bielema for me, that barge formation where he's got, 7, 8, I don't know, 18 guys on the line of scrimmage. And, there was a point where maybe the momentum late was shifting in favor of South Carolina, but they made big runs. Josh McCray had some big runs down the stretch in that game, and they just made plays, and they just milked that clock when they needed to. And Brett Bielema with that grin that only Brett Bielema has on the sidelines in this game, and it was the physicality. It was that Big Ten physicality that ended up winning out in this football game. What a big win! 10 wins, their first 10-win season since 2001. I think I was looking before. I think I went back. They've only had like 3 10-win seasons in my lifetime or something like that. So it's just, man, this guy was put on earth to coach Big Ten football, and that's it. I mean, he's been so successful in this conference as a player, of course, as a head coach at Wisconsin, and now Illinois, and where he has this program. It's an extremely bright future. When you look at guys like Luke Altmaier coming back, Caden Fagan coming back, J.C. Davis coming back, and a lot of these suspects coming back for next season, and you look at their schedule for next year, Oregon's not on the schedule, Penn State's not on the schedule, Michigan's not on the schedule. Yes, they have that Illinois game against Ohio State, but man, if you're looking for a surprise team in 25, you might find it in Champaign, Illinois. So the orange and blue Kool-Aid is certainly flowing, not only here in Locked On Illini country, but over in the Big Ten country as well.
I love that. This year, 2024, I feel like Illinois could have been a bigger story, finishing 10-3, but Indiana kind of soaked up all that energy as the newcomer. But, who knows? Next year, if Illinois can duplicate their success from this past year, or maybe even improve on it, right. We'll talk about it in the future for a future episode, but there's only one most likely guaranteed loss. But there's a chance, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but that this team only loses 1, maybe 2 games next year. And it's a future that we're really excited for here at Locked On Illini. But Ted, let's talk about 2024. And there was a big matchup between 3 Big Ten teams. Penn State comes out victorious. Let's talk about the Nittany Lions first.
Yeah, I mean, that was a game where Penn State was looking very good early on New Year's Day, right? They hit that big touchdown. Aller hits that big touchdown. I think it was Omari Evans over the top. They get out to 14-0, and then they get a turnover. They have the ball, and all of a sudden, all right, here comes the avalanche. And then you had a fumbled exchange from Drew Aller. Boise State gets it. And then I think from that point on, the momentum really started to shift in favor of Boise State. It was a 1-score game kind of through the third quarter and the fourth quarter, but Penn State eventually pulled away. I think this was another case in maybe Penn State not playing their absolute best game. I think their best game against this Boise State team, that they could have beaten them by 20 points. They could have beaten them by 30 points, something like that. But defensively, I think they did what they were supposed to do. They contained Ashton Genty. But once again, we saw what Oregon was able to do in the Big Ten championship game and the success they had throwing the ball. And now look at the success that Maddox Madsen had throwing the ball for Boise State. So that's something that they got to shore up. Look, we'll talk maybe about the Notre Dame game here in a little bit. They're not exactly the best passing team in the world. So maybe it's not something this week that certainly needs to get ultra flipped and corrected, but it's certainly something that I kind of thought of. But man, I tell you what, this Penn State run game is just absolutely hitting their peak right now. This offensive line is doing a fantastic job run blocking. Nolan Rucci, maybe an unsung hero coming in. Anthony Dacco at tackle, and he's been really, really good. But Singleton and Allen, like, when you talk about like a 3-game stretch for these guys, specifically Katron Allen, I don't think I've seen a better sequence or a chunk of games from this duo over the last couple of seasons. So they're running the ball. And this Penn State Notre Dame game, these might be two of the two best rushing teams in all of college football right now. It's certainly going to be fun. But Boise State, now that easy path that everybody talks about is in the rearview mirror, now it's time to prove it. Now it is finally time for James Franklin to win a big game. We'll see if he can do it.
Yeah, before we get to the other game, I do want to give some credit to Boise State because I didn't think that they'd be able to hang with Penn State. And, we talked about the easy schedule that Penn State had, but they certainly had to earn that win over Boise. And, I just got to give credit that Boise State plus Fiesta Bowl, it really is a thing. And so, it's one of those where, their fans need to hang their heads proud, because that was a really impressive performance by them. Someone who didn't exactly have the best performance, at least to be proud of, is the Oregon Ducks.
Baby.
That game was not very close from the onset. What a beatdown that was.
Oh my God. It was over just like that. It was over. Okay. First drive of the game, first play, I believe, from scrimmage, Will Howard hits G. Scott on the sideline for 20, 30 yards. And I think Oregon fans were sitting back and they were like, oh, okay. All right. Okay. We'll see what happens the rest of the way. And then Jeremiah Smith gets it. He breaks the tackle. He takes it all the way into the end zone. And it was at that point where Oregon needed to respond, and they absolutely didn't. Their offensive line just got eaten up front by guys like Tyleik Williams and Hamilton and Sawyer and Tui Molowau up front. Like, the trenches were great. There were a lot of questions about Ohio State on the offensive line, right, after they lost Seth McLaughlin and then Josh Simmons earlier in the season. But they have answered that question. They have passed that test with flying colors. To me, that is not even a conversation right now. The offensive line is playing great football. I talked about in my preview. Oregon needed to get pressure on Will Howard, right, to be able to shorten the time that these routes have to develop. Well, safe to say these routes had time to develop, and then those developed routes also had time to develop, right? It's Oregon's secondary just looked confused back there. This is still a group that needs to get better, right? We saw what happened with the Ducks last season in their 2 losses to Washington. Michael Penix and the Huskies, they just kept on moving the ball, and Oregon didn't really have an answer for it. The same thing happened here against Ohio State. They didn't get pressure. Mateo Uiagalelei, Jordan Birch, guys like that. There was just zero pressure. You got to give all the credit in the world to this Ohio State offensive line, like I said before. And now it's becoming clear. If Will Howard's got time to throw, ain't nobody stopping this passing attack. Ain't nobody stopping this passing attack. Like, Jeremiah Smith he's an alien. I can't believe he was playing high school. Can you imagine playing high school football against this kid last season, less than a calendar year ago? I mean, it's insane to me that he's got to play 2 more years of college football. Who knows? If anybody could maybe Maurice Claret their way early to the NFL, it could be Jeremiah Smith. Right. It's insane. I don't think anybody can cover him. I kind of look at what's left on the college football playoff in terms of secondary, in terms of defenses. I just don't see it. I don't see it. And it's very clear to me. This is the way this thing should have been the whole time. I think throughout this season, Ohio State and that Michigan game, I think, was clearly a wake-up call. They were hell-bent on running the football, being physical, and that's who they were going to be. And then Chip Kelly says, wait, we got 4 on the outside. We've got Emeka Ibuka. G. Scott was getting better at tight end. Why don't we just throw the ball? Nobody can match up with this. Why don't we throw the ball? And I think this is the Ohio State team that we certainly probably should have seen, because then you kind of saw when the throw game gets on, that's when Travion Henderson and his explosive run plays get going. We saw Quinshon Judkins certainly do his thing as well. But this is a machine. This is a product of the 12-team college football playoff. This is a very NFL-y like a thing where you want to be playing hot and be playing your best football at the right time. And Ohio State, you can certainly argue where they were in the pecking order for most of this season. I think a lot of this season, a lot of people thought this was not the number 1 team in the country, right? Look how they played against Nebraska. Look how they played against Michigan. Of course, losing to Oregon on October 12th earlier in the season. Like, this did not look like the team we see now. And now this team we see now it's got to be the undisputed favorite to certainly make a run right now. And then I'll say this to finish up on this game about Oregon. You got run off the field. This was clearly a beatdown, but I still think that this is a program that's still growing, which crazy 13-0 Big Ten champs, and you're still growing. There's certainly a lot of things, and I think this program is going to continue to get better, but Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs are both going to be back next year. So Ohio State certainly isn't going anywhere.
Yeah, Ohio State's just one of those, I talked about this on this show here. Like, my wife is a Buckeye, right? She got her degree from Ohio State. So I usually always have their game on in the background. And I've even said this to you in our preview show. Like, I genuinely think that Ohio State is the best team in the country. They just have a Michigan problem. And as you alluded to, for some reason, every time Michigan is on their schedule, they just simply try to out Michigan instead of just being Ohio State. And, had the game plan been different, I truly do feel like the result against the Wolverines would have been different as well. But I agree with you. I took a future out on this when the brackets came out. I think I got Ohio State plus 850 to win it all. I'm feeling good about it now. And right after this, we'll talk about the Buckeyes versus the Longhorns and Penn State versus Notre Dame.
From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets. Guaranteed, that's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
All right, Ted. Now there were only 4 remaining. I think all 4 teams are well deserving to be in the position that they're in now. I expect good games on both sides. Which one do you want to start off with?
How about Penn State, Notre Dame? This is a game that I think these are the two best Ohio State. We just talked about them, but I think the Ohio State strength is via the pass game right now. I think these are the two best rushing teams left, and I think they run the football extremely well. Of course, with Notre Dame, Riley Leonard, Jadarian Price, Jeremiah Love, right? We know that's been their bread and butter. They certainly throw the football pretty well. I think their defense is also, Notre Dame's defense is also coming up, and they're playing much better football certainly right now. They're playing with a lot of confidence. I love Marcus Freeman. I love what he's done with this Notre Dame program. I love the type of grit and toughness that they kind of play with. Hey, I guess they're a Big Ten member in hockey. Can we claim them? Well, maybe not on the football field, but they kind of play like a Big Ten football team, certainly. And then you look at Penn State. Right, this is a team that is also running the football extremely well. Defensive game plans both have to be who can stop the run, who can contain the run game. I think that's the team. I think that's able to do that is going to have a much better chance to come out on top. I think both the defensive line, I think both the defenses are pretty solid. So I think it's kind of hard to say which way this is going to go. Right at this point in time. So we'll see. It could come down to who can make more plays in the passing game. Right now, I trust Drew Allen, I think, of Penn State a little bit more, right? That game against Boise was a little bit weird. They took a lot of deep shots during that game, and deep shot after deep shot after deep shot, and maybe didn't work the middle of the field with Tyler Warren certainly enough. So I think you certainly would like to see that a little bit more. But this Notre Dame, they've got a pretty good secondary in there as well. So I think when both teams run the ball and maybe chew the clock as much, I think there's going to be maybe not as many plays that can be big swing plays. So I think there's going to be a few that they really need to be able to make throughout the course of this game. Whoever can make those plays, I think will certainly come out on top. But this is going to be, I think, a really fun northern physical type of football game. If you're into that type of football, I think that's what you'll see between the Nittany Lions and the Fighting Irish.
Yeah, I think both of these games that we have coming up this week are very vast contrasts of right. one another. And, this Penn State Notre Dame game, I can't decide who I think is going to win. Even now, if I can give you a prediction now, but in 5 minutes or even before the segment's over, I might very well change my mind. I think it's going to kind of come down to the coaching staff. Again, both of these programs have the opportunity to really ditch the stigma attached to them. Notre Dame's lack of success every time they made it to the 14 playoff, in the past, and would just get obliterated. James Franklin and all the baggage that he comes with his inability to win the big game. I'm really looking forward to this being a very close game at the end, and then seeing which side possibly, makes the wrong move. A very sick way to look at it, I'm sure. Yeah, but it's credit to both teams because I think they're so evenly matched. I think the one thing for sure is the people that are going to win for this game on Thursday night is college football fans, because I can't foresee this not being a really good football game. Yeah,
a lot of people said that about the Rose Bowl too. So and look what happened there. But we'll see. We'll see. Okay. It's going to be it's crazy to me. No matter what happens, Notre Dame, right? You mentioned their success. I mean, was this Sugar Bowl win their first big bowl win since like the 90s or something? I forgot, maybe early 2000s. I can't exactly remember. But they've got some sort of streak and falling up short in some of these bigger bowl games. And then Penn State, somebody who needs a big win, one of those teams, believe it or not, is going to be punching their ticket into the national championship. So whether it's Marcus Freeman, whether it's James Franklin, whoever wins that game, they're going to get a huge boost to maybe the narrative surrounding their program.
All right. And so let's talk about the other side of the bracket. You have the high-flying Ohio State Buckeyes. Whoops, had to correct that one. And, of course, the Texas Longhorn, a team that, talent for talent, it's as close to Ohio State, I feel like, on the offensive side as you can kind of get, at least from the playoff teams. Well, now that Oregon is gone. Tell me what you think of that matchup.
Yeah, these, like I said, when we talked about Penn State and Notre Dame running the football, I think these are two teams that are going to look to get fairly aerial. I think Will Howard and Quinn Ewers both certainly possess a lot of talent at the quarterback position. I have not been overly, I'm not going to be honest, I have not been overly impressed with Texas for most of this season. When they stomped Michigan at the beginning of the year, I think a lot of people thought, all right, Texas is that team. And there was a lot of that, and I kind of maybe agreed with it at that point. And then as the season really went on, they didn't have a big marquee victory. I mean, look at their schedule. That loss to Georgia certainly was in there, and but this is a team that just, and they played close games against teams that they should be beating by 20 points. They should be beating by 30 points. What, they get up to a 17-3 lead against Arizona State, I think it was. And then, I mean, credit to Kenny, credit to Cam Scadaboo and them for being able to come back.
And credit to you, Ted. Last week on this show, you need to clip this for your social media channels. Like, you absolutely said, do not count out Arizona State, and they put up a heck of a game.
Yeah, and now, I mean, we could get into targeting all we want. I mean, that's a game that I think Texas was. I think a lot of people agree with this point. I think Texas was saved in that game. They had multiple opportunities to put this game away. A couple of missed field goals, I think, there at the end of that one, and ASU just kept on battling. Like, for them to take, all credit. Like I said, Kenny's done a great job with that program. Arizona State, from sanctions to a possible Final Four berth. Crazy amount of progression over there. But for a team like Texas, as talented as Texas is, to not be able to put Arizona State away in that situation, and then you kind of look at the rest of the schedule, like I was talking about before, they've been good. Don't get me wrong, they've been good, but Ohio State is a freaking machine. Yeah. Like, I think that's the way we see it. I do not foresee maybe a 34-0 in the first half like we saw in the Rose Bowl. I'm going to be honest, folks. I would not be surprised if this gets out of hand. I'm not, like I said, not saying 34-0. I wouldn't be surprised if this thing is like 24-3 or 24-7 at half. I just think Ohio State is just playing. They are maybe one of the most angry teams right there that I've seen following that loss to Michigan. I don't think anybody can defend. They know it. They know nobody can defend us. Nobody can defend us. And Chip Kelly is scheming up some great game plans and using motion and doing also, like, that's the thing that that kind of confused Oregon at times. A lot of window dressing to get guys into different places as well. And I mean, we talked about Jeremiah and Emeka Ibuka. It's just like nobody can defend these guys. So Ohio State, let it rip. Remember that old Les Miles quote, let it rip. Like that's exactly what Chip Kelly and Ohio State needs to do. Nobody remaining in this playoff can stop that. So I don't know what the spread is on this game, but whatever it is, I'll take Ohio State, and I'll take Ohio State to cover. I think that they are just on an absolute they're on an absolute mission. They're on an absolute mission right now, and this is, I think, is the team that we all expected at the beginning of the season. Texas hasn't been overly impressive, so I certainly think we do see the Buckeyes in Atlanta on January 20th.
See, I agree with you completely, and I was waiting for the lines to come out for Ohio State versus Texas, and it came out at -4.5.
Okay.
Slammed it, at the time.
Yeah.
And then it went up to, I believe, 6.5, which I still think is a really good line for Ohio State. And now I believe, at least as of yesterday, it was 5.5. So it looks like it's going to settle in around that range.
Okay.
The thing is, I agree with you completely, Ted. I think Ohio State, if they play the way that they're capable of playing, this game isn't going to be close. Oregon's a better team than Texas was, and we saw what Ohio State just did to Oregon. But the problem is, it's not just you and I saying that. Most people I've seen previewing this game, it seems to be the consensus. And so when there's a consensus on one side, but the line isn't moving all that much, that's what usually has me a little bit more hesitant on, being even more confident in that pick. But either way, I think it's going to be a really, really good football game on Friday night.
Yeah, and then you look at I didn't really talk about defense for Ohio State, but man, once again, that defense is the secondary has been playing a lot better. The defensive line is just they're blowing people up out there. I think it comes down to how much do you think Texas can score in this game? If Ohio State is running and gunning, which I expect them to do, right, and their offensive line is playing really good football right now. If they're running and gunning, you think Texas can keep up with them? I don't think so. I think that this could get into a situation. Like I said, not totally like the Rose Bowl, but the problem, like with the Ducks specifically in the Rose Bowl, is and I kind of made this comparison with a few things the past few weeks. Once the avalanche is coming and you're sitting there at the end of the mountain, the avalanche is coming a lot faster than you're running. You can run and you can run and you can run, but eventually it's going to eat you up. So Texas needs, if Ohio State is coming out with a lot of momentum on offense, Texas better have brought their A game on offense, right, on the other side of the ball, because they need to sling it. Okay, how many stops can you get before this thing gets out of hand? That's, I think, what Texas needs to be dialed in on, and I don't know. I just don't see it. The Buckeyes are just playing out of their mind, certainly out of their mind right now on offense and defense, and God, they're just amazing how good they are right now.
Exactly right. Well, hopefully it'll be two watchable football games on Thursday, Friday, as opposed to that Rose Bowl. It wasn't so much fun. I'm assuming you're going to have some previews on the Big Ten, Ted Chadner?
Yes, absolutely. Coming up, we're going to have previews of both of these games and predictions of both of these games coming up, and so that's going to be a lot of fun. Going to have some post game as it pertains to this game, and then assuming we get at least one team in the national championship game, going to have all kinds of coverage as it pertains to that as well. And then now, like for the most part, we're in an off-season mode for a majority of teams in the Big Ten, so we're starting to talk about maybe some futures, some portal stuff. Certainly as well. So, that's kind of where we are right now. It's kind of crazy. What are we at January 6th? I mean, we got, a couple of months, 2.5 months until spring ball will maybe really start to get around the corner. So it's this crossover right now, but of course we're really dialed in on these two semifinal teams.
Best in the world. See you next week, Ted.
All right. Sounds good.
And that's going to wrap it up for this edition of Locked On Illini. Don't forget, if you haven't already, there's a link to our Discord channel in the description. We'll be talking about live back and forth about the football games on Thursday and Friday night. Come join the interaction. We're talking Illini sports every single day. Before you head on out, make sure you've liked and hit subscribe to this video. Again, daily content every single day, 30 minutes at least we talk Illini football, Illini basketball, and I'll be looking into other sports if that's what you guys want. I always appreciate your guys' feedback. I love this community that we have growing. And until next time, ILL, love you guys.